everyone, and welcome to the F1 Time Portal, an F1 history podcast by two Formula One nerds. I'm your host, Rosa.
And I'm your super other host, Luigi. And today we're going to take you back to the 1953 season. So let's go! So, the end of 52 was similar to that of 51. As we know, there was a fierce rivalry between two Italian teams. But now, instead of it being between Alfa Romeo and Ferrari, it was now between Ferrari and Maserati. So both cars were somewhat evenly matched, and Fangio is back to head the Maserati team. You may recall Fangio was away last year with the neck injury. What was that injury from again, Rosa?
He was racing in a non-championship race and he had a massive car accident and had a broken neck.
That's right. He was exhausted. Yes. So, Ascari was continuing to lead the Ferrari team too, and they were pretty much the two main protagonists of 1953.
So we're still racing under F2 rules, which is allowing cars with smaller engines to compete for the F1 championship.
Yeah, so the Ferrari Tipo 500 from 1952 was primarily unchanged, but it did have increased brake horsepower to 190. The Maserati, on the other hand, produced a heavily revised car which had larger fuel tanks to avoid fuel stops, and that came in at about 190 to 195 brake horsepower, so pretty evenly matched on the power stakes. Cooper also produced a new model car with a new Alta engine.
And they signed a big name, Moss, who is continuing to stick with British. We'll see how he goes this season.
Now, let's not forget, he's not a big name yet. To us.
No, that's true.
He might be remembered.
No.
Yeah. His shining times will come. So, the Cooper team was pretty much outclassed by the Ferrari and Maserati, along with other teams that had to be satisfied with modifications to their existing cars versus new models. Of some importance, though, was one of our favourite drivers, Bonetto the Pirate. He drove in 1953, so he was back. And what's cool is Fangio's teammates were Gonzalez and Bonetto in the Maserati, taking on the Ferraris. So Ferrari were very impressed with Hawthorn in 1952, and they actually signed him up alongside Ascari, Farina and Villarace, and they had dropped Taruffi.
Yes, last season, Mike Hawthorn captured the attention of Enzo Ferrari, who invited him to Modena for a tryout. And so after driving the Ferrari, he took his Cooper for a spin around the track and he crashed it into the safety straw bales and ended up in hospital. And he thought he had, made a big mistake and Enzo was going to drop him. But Enzo didn't care. He actually thought that a driver who never crashed wasn't trying hard enough. So he ended up signing for the big team and he was a bit nervous about becoming a professional race car driver, but he really wanted to drive alongside his hero, Ascari.
And you know what the interesting thing is? Ferrari was ahead of his time in terms of management style because he was embracing failure. That was ahead of its time. So all up, it was considered that Maserati and Ferrari had pretty much equal strength driver lineups and pretty much equal strength cars. So we looked like we were on for a very exciting season.
Yeah, and the Fangio and Ascari rivalry would continue. And the other change this season is that we have 9 races instead of 8. And we have the first proper race outside of Europe. So we can actually now call it a true world championship with the first Argentinian Grand Prix.
So we're up to the Argentinian Grand Prix, January 18. So this is the first race outside of Europe. Is that right, Rosa?
Yes, that's right. Yep, first time ever outside of Europe.
Oh, wow.
And not including the Indy race that we don't talk about.
I assume we've excluded that 100%.
Yes.
So, okay. So what else was going on with this race?
It was 97 laps, 16 drivers, and there was a 4x3x4 grid, but there were a lot of teams missing. Like many of the British teams didn't make it over, and that included Stirling Moss.
Yes.
The other thing that happened at this race was that it was Hawthorn's first race in a Ferrari, and Enzo Ferrari decided as a welcome to paint his Ferrari in British racing green. So that was pretty revolutionary as well. They traditionally raced in red, of course. But Hawthorn's Ferrari was green for this race.
You know what the weird thing is? I'm sensing like a love affair. You know, he loved Hawthorn crashing. He's painting the car green. Yes. I can't imagine him doing that.
Yep.
But he died a long time ago now. But, gee, I don't hear about that too often.
No. And, as you say, he also signed a non-Italian driver. I mean, traditionally they were all Italian drivers that were signed up for Ferrari.
Yeah, interesting. So Maserati started this race with an older model car as their new car was not quite ready. So Fangio in the sort of older Maserati had quite a few niggles in practice, but he still gave Ferrari a real challenge by taking second on the grid with 1 minute 56.1 with Ascari behind Ascari, on 1 minute 55.4. So not far between the two cars considering the Maserati was the older car. The remainder of the front row was the Ferraris of Villaraci in third and Farina in fourth. Gonzalez was fifth and Hawthorn sixth in his Ferrari debut, so not a bad effort. Now, the interesting thing about this race, well, actually not an interesting thing, as we'll come to pass, is that there were enormous crowds for this race. And this made for an apparent overflow of people, and this got the drivers actually really worried.
Yeah, well, that is interesting considering that, most of these drivers are used to taking big risks in car racing. They didn't have a lot of safety measures. They had cloth helmets, no seat belts. So the fact that the big crowd worried them is saying something, I think.
Yeah, it's a real interesting message. And the organisers, however, were adamant that the police had it all under control and the race started only 4 minutes late. Now, that's pretty impressive. Wow. Yeah.
That is impressive.
In this era of yellow flag, we'll take half an hour to decide if we're going to restart the race if there's a red flag. That driver's come off, we can't get that car off, we'll red flag it straight away. And they managed to resolve this whole issue with just a 4-minute lag, no internet, no Google, they probably didn't even have walkie-talkies. I
was going to say there's probably not even any electronic communication happening. There's probably people just running from one area to another.
I'm visualizing people from one end of the pit straight giving other people on the pit straight the finger or something. Yeah.
Chinese whispers.
Yeah. I went further, but okay. So at race start, Ascari led away with Gonzalez from fifth, charging up and challenging Fangio for second place, which is pretty awesome. Now, let's not forget Fangio is Argentinian and Gonzalez is also Argentinian. Of interest to me, and we make reference and credit to the book Grand Prix by Mike Lang, and I love the way this is written, which is why I'm quoting it from the Mike Lang book. Hawthorn made a nonsense of his start and consequently had cars flying past on either side of him. So, yeah, what do you think of that?
That is interesting. I know just the term nonsense. I mean, what does it mean? And which F1 driver in today's competition would be a nonsense starter? Well, don't you dare say Leclerc, Luigi.
Well, we're in February 2024. I can only use current data, and he has got not 12 poles in a row, but of the 12 pole positions he has achieved, he has 0 wins. So I'm not saying he's a nonsense starter. That's not his
fault.
I know.
No.
He's had a few.
Come on.
He's had a few not great starts though, but he's also been getting poles in the.
I'll give you a few.
Yeah. So Hawthorn was 13th at the end of the first lap. However, up front, Ascari was leading Gonzalez, Fangio, Bonetto, and Farina and Villaraci followed. By this stage, Ascari was building his lead by almost a second a lap, which is much like cars of today, to be honest. So attention pretty much moved back to Hawthorn's recovery drive, and Villaraci, who made an early stop, was also pushing up through the midfield. And they were both
Okay,
Ferraris,
the
of course.
Ferraris are trying hard here. Yes,
Yeah,
they're trying hard.
So by lap 13, as is normally the case, when the leader's not doing much of interest other than dominating, both Hawthorn and Villarace had passed 7 cars each. And Villarace even passed Hawthorn to take 6th place at one stage. This is where an extremely unfortunate event took place, and the concern of the drivers about the crowd reared its ugly head. So on lap 32, a spectator suddenly ran across the road in front of Farina. In trying to avoid him, Farina lost control of his Ferrari and ran into a mass of spectators. Although Farina avoided serious injury, 15 spectators were killed and several more badly injured. Total chaos broke out, with people running across the circuit due to the confusion, but the race actually continued.
Wow, I cannot believe that. Surely that wouldn't happen today.
It's disgusting. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, no, not at all. When you Google images of this race, there are some pictures on the internet that you can have a look at. You could see the spectators were standing right by the track. Like I'm saying, like 1.5 meters from the track. There is no fencing, not even any safety hay bales, nothing. There's nothing there.
So why
the other thing that was
why was it so overcrowded? Like, it's ridiculous. Like, how did that happen?
There were there was the president just really wanted a lot of people there. There were 6 Argentinian drivers in the field, including Fangio, the national hero. And so he wanted a big crowd. So he allowed free access to the circuit.
The sad thing is, while this horror show took place, Fangio retired. So during the final stages of the race, Gonzalez moved up to 2nd place, but due to a stop for fuel and tyres, Villarace moved up to 2nd, and that's pretty much how the race landed. So we had the final results were Ascari getting his 7th win in a row, which is unbelievable.
Wow.
Yeah. Villarace 2nd, Gonzalez 3rd, and Hawthorn 4th.
Pretty good for Hawthorn in his debut as well.
Yeah, nearly on the podium, and a good recovery drive. Even Villarace got 2nd, even better recovery drive.
Even better, yes.
Yeah.
So the World Championships standings then were Ascari on 9, Villarace on 6, Gonzalez on 4, and Hawthorn on 3.
So now we're up to the 2nd race of the season, the Dutch Grand Prix. This was on the 7th of June. It was a 90-lap race, and there were 20 drivers in the race. Funny, you see 20 drivers in the race in 1950, 20 drivers 2024. A 3x2x3 grid. Now, the track was only resurfaced a week prior to the race, which meant there was a lot of loose grit around the track, which soon became quite a problem. To deal with the challenge of flying grit, Ascari switched to a spare car with a large wire gauze fitted, which most teams copied. And I found that interesting to share because it just showed the era of, what are they doing? What are they doing? It was really, up there. They're doing it, we should do it.
Yes.
And it's nice to see that because nothing's changed, has it?
No, they're still copying each other, aren't they?
Yeah. By this stage, the new Maseratis had arrived, but the Ferrari was still setting the pace. Ascari got pole with 1 minute 51.1, followed by Fangio, 1 minute 52.7, so about 1.6 behind. So a little bit of a gap this time, and Farina next with 1 minute 53. So when the race started, Ascari leapt into an immediate lead.
It seems that Ascari is an almost awesome starter. Like, I can't recall a bad start from him yet.
Yeah, he must have had really good reactions. I wonder if they did those things like, what's that, light test? Is that what it's called? When you press those buttons really fast?
Oh, yeah, the reaction test. Reaction test.
I wonder if he did an old school version of that.
I don't know how professional the sport was back then. I doubt that they did anything except get in a car and drive it fast.
Yeah, just talent was the core of it. And of course, money was part of it too. There are some privateers, but these drivers are not, they're not paid drivers. Just to make that very clear. No. The ones we talk about are not the paid drivers. So Fangio unfortunately slipped back to 4th. having been squeezed on either side by Farina and Villaraci. And that meant we had a Ferrari 1, 2, 3. So there you go, Rosa, just for you.
Nice.
Yeah. So during the early stage of the race, Fangio could make no impression on the Ferraris, and Ascari just continued to pull away on his own, including his own teammates, of course, with the same car. So Gonzalez, who had qualified 5th, had a terrible start and fell way back to 14th. What would we call that?
Nonsense start.
Yeah, nonsense start. I don't know why they served it to Hawthorn, but not to Gonzalez.
Yeah,
Maybe
not to Gonzalez.
Mike Lang doesn't sound. In fact, I know Mike Lang is British, so maybe he held Hawthorn to a higher standard in his writing.
Maybe, yes. He was very disappointed in his countrymen.
Yeah, and he wanted it known to all. Yeah. So while he worked his way back, if this book was published in Argentinian, I'll make a bet Gonzalez would have been given the Argentinian word for nonsense start.
Yeah, yes.
So while Gonzalez worked his way back to the front of the midfield, he had car troubles and retired, unfortunately. However, luckily, he was close to the pits, so he took over Bonetto, the Pirates car. And you may recall, this has happened a few times now.
Gosh, here we go again.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah. So with the Ferraris leading and in control, with Villaraci and Farina occasionally changing positions in second and third, and Ascari still up front, the attention turned to the fast-charging Gonzalez in Bonetto's car. By lap 36, he was up to 5th place, having made many passes and taken advantage of Fangio's retirement with a broken axle.
Well, that's the second retirement for Fangio in a row. So Maserati is becoming a little bit unreliable now.
Yeah, and reliability counts for a lot. You know, even though they only counted the best 4 results, you can't keep retiring because if you want to be a protagonist with Ascari in this championship, you actually got to put it on the ground and land
Finish the races.
Yeah, you got to finish the races. Yeah. So Gonzalez was driving with such energy that in his charge, he actually unlapped himself from Hawthorn, who at that time was unduly not bothered being a lap ahead. Like, why would I tangle with someone that's a whole lap behind? So fair enough, right? Wouldn't you say?
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yep. Yes, fair enough.
But then he charged with such energy that on lap 48, we're talking Gonzalez still, he spun his car a full 360, but kept the engine running and kept going, which takes quite a bit of skill.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes, and that would have been very scary for the crowd.
Especially those that... I would suggest they all read the news reports about what happened in Argentina.
Yes, they would have all known what happened to Argentina. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So by lap 67, Villaraci was out, which meant Gonzalez was now up to 4th place, which is unbelievable. You know, he had the 360 spin, way behind Hawthorn.
Yes.
After 11 laps, Gonzalez had done the seemingly impossible. He had caught the entire lap up and he was back behind Hawthorn again. And
wow,
he passed him again.
Jeez.
It's pretty impressive. And Hawthorn tried to hold on to Gonzalez, probably regretting that he let him through the first time. But Hawthorn gradually just started to pull away. And Gonzalez started to pull away to consolidate 3rd place and pretty much received a hero's welcome for his efforts.
And Moss finished last.
Yeah. So Ascari won, followed by Farina, and then, of course, the person who made this race interesting, Gonzalez, in Bonetto's car, finished 3rd and Hawthorn 4th.
Okay, so we have Ascari stretching his lead to 17, then Villaraci on 7 and Farina on 6. And this is Ascari's 8th win in a row.
That is phenomenal.
Well, given that there's only 6 or 7 races a year, that's pretty good, isn't it? And it's happening over multiple seasons as well.
Yeah, let's not forget at the beginning of 52, he skipped that race for silly reasons, you may recall.
Yes, yep.
For those that may not have heard the 52 episode, he actually went to IndyCar. And that's the one race.
The trip,
and one race he didn't win was that one.
Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, we're up to the Belgium Grand Prix, June 21, 36 laps and 20 drivers. and the grid was a 3x2x3 grid. So I mention it every now and then, maybe more for myself than listeners, but when I say 3x2x3, I mean side by side, not staggered like we have them nowadays.
No, they're not stacked. They're in a row. Like, it's just unbelievable. But anyway.
They must have had a racing line. You know,
they must have, yes.
You'd think so. You'd have to think so.
Yes. Yeah, otherwise what's the advantage? But anyway.
Yeah.
And an important thing to note also is, again, Sterling Moss's team is not competing at this track. Don't know why. I couldn't find out why, but his team's not here.
Interesting. So after the Dutch Grand Prix, the Maseratis were sent back to Modena for stronger rear axles. They'd had a fair few retirements, and they obviously realised they had a good car, but it wasn't finishing. They were now confident that they were as fast as the Ferraris. And this was actually proven to be the case, with Fangio getting his first pole position of the year with 4 minutes and 30 seconds ahead of Ascari, to 4 minutes 32, then Gonzalez, who actually got the same time as Ascari. So the Ferrari driver was in the middle of a Maserati sandwich. This was a concern because Ferrari looked like the challenge was on. So when the race started, Fangio and Gonzalez actually beat Ascari off the line.
Oh my God, I jinxed him. A rare bad start by Ascari.
Yeah. So at lap 1, Gonzalez was leading by 3 seconds from Fangio, who had a similar lead over Ascari. So Gonzalez is a bit of a purple patch, you'd say. You know, he's had a few races in a row, just gunning it. By lap 8, Gonzalez was 8 seconds ahead of Fangio and 20 ahead of Ascari. So he was in a zone. And don't forget, he's beating his world champion teammate. So this was certainly a statement by the Maserati team. By lap 10, Gonzalez was 14 seconds ahead of Fangio and 53 seconds ahead of Ascari.
Wow.
So Ferrari had clearly met their match. And those rear axles look like they're holding up. However, by lap 12, the leading Maserati slowed dramatically with a broken accelerator pedal. And this left Fangio 40 seconds ahead of Ascari in the lead. So poor Gonzalez. Then Fangio's engine went sick. And he was forced to retire at the pits. Yeah, sick was the term they used. COVID didn't exist back then.
No.
So he took over second-rate Maserati driver of Claes, but Fangio was way down in 8th place in that replacement car. So guess what? This left Ascari entirely on his own in the lead.
That Ferrari reliability.
Yeah. If only... I mean, Ferrari's been
not
pretty
something
reliable.
we're used to seeing now.
Yeah, I know. This year, 2023, was not too bad, but previous years were not that good. But Ferrari has improved. Let's give them credit for that.
Yeah, they were reliable, but they finished, 5th, 6th, 7th?
Yeah.
Anyway. I think that's a topic of another podcast.
In about 10 years' time, when we get there. We talk about the reliability of Ferrari in 2019 in particular, I recall, was not a beautiful year for them.
Yes.
Yeah. So the race had a few retirements, but eyes were on Fangio's charge in Claes's car, because by lap 29, Fangio had pulled himself back up to 3rd. However, his charge was to naught, as he had a spin later in the race due to a steering failure and ended up in a ditch, luckily without injury.
Lots of ditches around here too, isn't there?
Yeah.
Like, that's not the first time we hear about ditches. Wonder when they disappeared from the circuits.
I know. At what point did someone say, this is too far? It wouldn't surprise me if it was the crowd that said, we can't watch from the ditch because we're lower than we need.
We're too low.
We want you to turn this ditch into a mound and then you can keep it.
Yeah.
But steering failure. How do you handle steering failure? That's pretty scary.
Yeah.
Bit of control concerns.
It is.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Ascari wins with Villaraci in second, nearly 3 minutes behind, and Marimon third.
Wow. So this is Ascari's 9th win in a row. And he sets a record that would only be equalled in 2013 by Vettel and finally beaten in 2023 by Max Verstappen.
Yeah, that's phenomenal.
Huge.
70-year record.
Yep.
70-ish years. I don't know the
Yep.
exact number. But we are talking 53, 2023. You'd think that'd be easy to work out. I
Yes.
think that is 70 on the dot.
That is exactly 70 years.
70
Luigi.
years.
Yes.
What a record to finally break. And look how long he held it for. We've had a lot of good drivers in that time. Even Hamilton hasn't won that many races in a row. So,
a lot of dominant cars, and we still didn't get that record broken for 70 years.
Correct. So what's the championship looking like?
Ascari's pulling further ahead on 25 points. Villarace's caught him up a little bit on 13, Gonzalez on 7, and Farina on 6.
Okay. So now we're up to the French Grand Prix. It's on July the 5th, and it's a 60-lap race with 25 drivers competing and a 3x2x3 grid formation. At this race, we've seen Maserati really come strong and be, reliability, but unlucky. But there's not much to choose between the Ferraris and the Maseratis. It did seem that the brakes and the low-speed acceleration of the Ferrari was superior, which everyone thought would maybe work in the Ferrari's favour on this track. So qualifying was interesting. So Ascari took pole position with 2 minutes 41.2, followed by, are you ready for it? Bonetto, 2 minutes 41.5, only 0.3 behind. But it wasn't Bonetto. That's the thing. And
what do you mean?
I think this is quite an anomaly, and I've never heard of it since. And this is why. That second fastest time of 2 minutes 41.5 was actually set by Gonzalez in Bonetto's car. But for some reason, it was credited to Bonetto, so he started in second place.
What?
I know.
Well, where was Gonzalez? Was he further down?
He qualified 5th in his own car.
So hang on. Bonetto gave Gonzalez his car in qualifying, and he qualified Bonetto's car in second place.
Correct. And then he had to go and start in 5th.
What's going on?
Yeah, I know. Can you imagine that happening?
Can you imagine if that was happening today? I know. Like, the Haas team getting Verstappen to qualify their car in second.
That might be their strategy. They might say, we've got the $250 million cap. Let's allocate $10 billion for money to Max or Leclerc, the good qualifiers, or Hamilton. Give them 500 grand. Give us a lap in Q1. Get us into Q2. They'll quickly do their really fast lap Q1 at the beginning. Put in a banker. Get their car. They'll qualify 10th or 12th. Get in the Haas. Do a lap.
Yes.
And they could do it for charity. So then the FIA would allow it.
They could.
Yeah.
They could.
It's never going to happen.
I doubt the FIA would. Never going to happen.
But it was allowed. There's a precedent. Anyway, the top 6 were separated by just 1.3 seconds, which is pretty good for that time. So Villarace was 3rd, Fangio 4th, and Gonzalez in Gonzalez's car in 5th. So the F1 race did have an interesting event happen before it, and there was a sports car race. And that started on Saturday night prior to the F1 race on Sunday. However, there was controversy as the leading Ferrari sports car was disqualified by what was reported in the media as infringement of numerous regulations. Now, Rosa, you're a Ferrari expert. Please explain.
Oh, I don't know about expert, but I've tried to find out a little bit more about this. But during that race, the leading Ferrari driven by Maglioli and Piero Carini was disqualified for receiving a push start and for switching off side lights before the appointed time. Now, I don't know what that was about, but obviously that was one of the rules. Mm-hmm. Many, including the Ferrari team manager Ugolini, felt that this was very unfair since the push start had been to get clear of spilt petrol in the pit lane, and nearly every other car in the race had already switched off their side lights by the time Maglioli did the same. So he was saying we haven't done nothing that anyone else hasn't done. Also, the crowd disagreed with the disqualification and they started booing and throwing rubbish at the head officials. That would have been something to see.
Oh, that would have been
But
awesome.
they, yeah, I don't know about awesome, but as a result, Ferrari threatened to withdraw their cars from the Grand Prix, which would have handed Maserati an easy win. However, after several phone calls between France and Modena, the Ferraris were eventually allowed to start in the Grand Prix, which I found very strange language because they weren't going to be disqualified for the Grand Prix. They were going to withdraw their cars in protest from being disqualified in the previous race. So who knows what went on, but at the end of the day, they started in the Grand Prix.
Yeah, the wording is hilarious because the mere fact it says Ferrari threatened to withdraw their cars from the Grand Prix, so that's a threat.
Yes.
What happened next is the FIA say, okay, you're out. And then the chats happened. And then somehow the Ferraris were allowed to start. But they're the ones that threatened to leave.
Exactly.
So I think there was a bit of gamesmanship and,
something happened. Some power play happened.
Yeah. Interesting times. Not good enough for a movie, I'd say. Maybe too boring, but maybe throwing the rubbish at those officials. I mean, I'm laughing because I'm assuming they're throwing things like food, not bricks or rocks. You know what I mean?
No, I would say it was like bananas and apples.
And that's what makes it funny, you know?
Yeah.
So anyway, Gonzalez, maybe frustrated that he was starting the race way down in fifth, started the race with a half full tank of fuel, and he duly rocketed into the lead from second row of the grid. So look at that. Weight saving made a big difference because remember, these cars are like tanks.
Yep.
Take away half the fuel, and guess what? You're a rocket ship tank.
Yep.
So by the end of lap one, Ascari followed Gonzalez in second place, with Villaraci next, then Bonetto, Hawthorn, and Fangio. So look at that. Gonzalez is ahead of even Bonetto. Gonzalez extended his lead, while behind, Ascari, Hawthorn, and Villaraci battled it out for second place, with those three drivers exchanging positions quite regularly. Up to lap 25, the pace was electrifying. Gonzalez had built up a 20-second lead, but behind, Ascari, Hawthorn, Villaraci, Fangio, and Farina were neck and neck and continually changing positions. I mean, this is amazing racing.
Yeah, that's very close racing, isn't it?
Yeah,
I mean, just the ability for these cars to follow each other so closely would have been amazing to see.
No, very little in the way of aerodynamics. It would have been all mechanical grip and upper body strength and stamina. I think in the first episode we talk about the drivers. It was all elbow and arm strength. No power steering, of course.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No.
If anything, you're lucky to have steering that works, as Fangio found out last race. So, however, Fangio, knowing his teammate, Gonzalez, who was rocketing it away in the lead on his half-fueled car, knowing his teammate was due to make his pit stop on lap 29, actually pushed to the limit to take second place, knowing full well that it would become the lead. Gonzalez was in the pits and out in 30 seconds, but the howling mob shot by, so he came back in 6th place ahead of Villaraci. On lap 30, Hawthorn had moved up into 2nd place, and he and the leading Fangio began pulling away very slowly from the rest. They then had their own intense battle, with the lead changing virtually every lap.
Wow. Yeah, this race ended up being known as the race of the century due to that 60-lap battle between Hawthorn and Fangio. Pretty much, I think they switched the lead at every corner.
That's just phenomenal. I mean, it's hard to appreciate that today. I mean, we get maybe snippets of that in the modern era, but can you imagine being there? Not one bad point.
That would have been...
Yeah, not one bad point on the track. You know what I mean? You saw awesomeness every time.
That's right.
Yeah. So in the meantime, the close racing behind was still as keen as ever. So we had the leaders having the battle of the century and the rest. So Gonzalez was making up lost ground following his pit stop. By lap 34, he passed Maramon. 2 laps later, Ascari, and then Farina. So the Ferraris of Ascari and Farina had a strong battle with Gonzalez for many laps until Farina started to fall away.
Really close racing, isn't it?
Yeah, and it doesn't end there. Lap 58, and remember this is a 60-lap race, Hawthorn and Fangio crossed the line side by side. And just behind them, Gonzalez and Ascari crossed the line side by side. You know, just the mentality, just a sidetrack here. When you've still got 2 laps to go and you're crossing the line side by side, that's a mind game. You're telling the other driver, hey, I'm right here, mate. I'm right next to you. You know,
and I'm not backing down.
Yeah. It's a full on. You know, when people say the gentleman era, that's rubbish.
Yes.
This is not what gentlemen do.
Well, at least he didn't force him off the track.
Yeah, there's another word for that though, that I wouldn't call it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I don't want to say the words. That'll come in time.
No.
In the many years ahead.
Yes, I know.
Because that sort of driving doesn't happen till much later, actually.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, the mid-'80s, Luigi?
Maybe from the mid-'80s, yeah. Bit of yellow.
Yeah.
So lap 59, people are going to get very angry at that. I was meaning the yellow sun. I was meaning the sun in the driver's eyes. So lap 59, we've got to remember 60-lap race. Hawthorn had a slight edge over Fangio, but the second pair of Gonzalez and Ascari were side by side again. Again, mind games, I say. The last lap was tremendous, with everyone on their toes as the 4 cars approached the last corner together. So Hawthorn was still leading as the checkered flag was brought out, but there was just a blur as the cars crossed the line, with Hawthorn just coming out on top. And not only had he won the race of the century, he was the first Englishman to win an F1 championship race.
Good on him. Apparently he won that race only after a very clever late braking manoeuvre on the very last corner. So that's pretty aggressive driving against Fangio.
Yeah, and I'll make a bet he probably only developed that idea or technique and only applied it the one time, because if he applied it earlier, the other drivers may have known it was coming. So I'm assuming, but I think it's a fair assumption to make. If they're quoting that took place and they're calling it clever, that implies it wasn't revealed.
Yes. No, that's right.
So the crowds cheered and surged onto the circuit in their excitement. For, as the book states, the F1 Bible, they had just witnessed one of the greatest Grand Prix races ever. And, gee, I wish I could watch that race.
Yeah, we don't have any footage of these races, do we?
You might see some limited snippets here and there, but this is 53. TV barely existed.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're lucky to have the limited footage we do have, to be honest. So the first British driver to win a race as well. So, we don't have British bias. We're Australians. So, we're waiting for the first Australian, but they're coming.
It's coming.
So, Fangio was second, Gonzalez third, Ascari fourth. Sorry, to quickly cover off the top 4.
Sorry. Yeah. So the World Driver Championship standings are Ascari on 28, Hawthorn jumps into second on 14, Villarace on 13 and Gonzalez on 11. So it's Ferrari, Maserati.
Yeah, and Fangio's not up there yet, but he's had a bit of bad luck this year, actually. So, yeah.
He has, yes.
So we're up to the British Grand Prix, which is the 18th of July, and this is a 90-lap race, and there are 28 drivers on this track, and there were very high expectations for this race after the awesome French Grand Prix duel between the Ferraris and the Maseratis. And the signs were good, because the front row of this race was Ferrari first with Ascari, then Gonzalez in the Maserati, then Hawthorn in the Ferrari, then Fangio in the Maserati. So that's, the 4 cars taking turns in their alternate positions. And this time, however, Gonzalez just drove his own car. So he did well to get second place on the grid for himself.
There you go. Good on him.
Yeah.
And again, Sterling Moss was not starting in this race. For some reason, because he's retired at the French Grand Prix, his car had to be withdrawn from this Grand Prix. Again, I didn't find out much about why that was the case, only that his Cooper wasn't allowed to start.
Now, this is obviously the British Grand Prix, so I'm sure he wasn't a party to this decision. Or he would have been a party, but not in agreement. But the only reason we mention Moss is because, like we talk about the drivers that matter or do or achieve things. And to this point, if Moss's career ended right now, we wouldn't have been mentioning him up to this point.
You wouldn't. You wouldn't even really know who he was.
Correct. Yeah. But look, you can still cut through like Bonetto. He didn't exactly.
Yes.
I mean, he got a few good results. Let's not be too tough on him. I'm sure he was an awesome driver, but
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yes.
So this is the British Grand Prix. So at race start, Ascari took the lead with Fangio slotting into second from fourth on the grid. So on the second lap, Gonzalez squeezed past his teammate Fangio. So, Argentinian passing Argentinian. And Ascari and Gonzalez were setting a blistering pace. Gonzalez is having a good year, isn't he? He's up there all the time.
He is. He's having a great year. Yep.
And by lap 10, Ascari was now starting to leave Gonzalez behind. But Gonzalez doggedly stayed as close as he could, but he went to the pits on lap 17 as scrutineers had hung out a black flag after seeing oil escaping the Maserati engine. It took him 3 laps for that black flag to be shown for Gonzalez to finally come into the pits.
Okay, so a couple of things here.
Mm-hmm.
There's a black flag for oil coming out of a car, but not when a car plows into the crowd earlier in the season. Like, when did the black flag thing come about? So that's interesting.
And we've got an unspoken rule. Well, it's not an unspoken rule. It is, if we read about it the first time, that's the first time it happened. So, okay, that's not exactly fact, of course. We're being a bit facetious there. But, where the hell was that black flag in Argentina? In fact, 15 black flags, to be honest.
Yes. And it took him 3 laps to obey the black flag? That's a bit sus.
Well, I remember...
Meanwhile, he's leaking oil all over the track.
Apparently, because in the pits, there was a stormy scene and Gonzalez was allowed to continue as the oil leak had seemingly stopped. Now, this stormy scene must have been really fast because he only lost 2 places. So there must have been fury, arms waving, hands pointing at the back of the car, no oil leaking, and they were probably going, and then he just took off. He lost 2 places. So.
I don't even think they checked it properly. It doesn't sound like they checked it properly if you only lost 2 places.
Yeah, that's right. So Ascari now had a 15-second lead with Fangio second, Villaraci third, a further 15 seconds back. Farina was fourth and was now right on Gonzalez's tail. So Gonzalez was right up there too. Because what happened was Gonzalez had to make a pit stop for fuel, and guess what else he needed?
If you say oil...
Yeah. Why would he need oil? That doesn't make sense. It was oil.
Why would he need oil?
Yeah, I know.
But there's no leak.
Yeah, there's no
leak, Luigi.
Maybe it was. Maybe they just wanted to give the finger. We're giving you the finger. Look, we're pouring in oil, and we don't even need it.
No.
So Farina took over third place, and he drew away. So in the final half hour, heavy rain fell, but there was no further action to really report. Other than Prince Bira, he's still driving. But I don't think he drove consistently. I think he's sort of in and out. He finished 7th.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Ascari was first, Fangio second, 60 seconds behind. Farina third, 2 laps behind. And fourth was Orly Gonzalez, also 2 laps behind.
Okay, so the World Driver Championship standings are Ascari on 33.5, Hawthorn on 16, Gonzalez on 13.5, and Villaraci and Fangio on 13.
That's right.
So Ascari's, just running away with it at the moment.
Well, has he got the championship locked up yet? If not, not far, you'd think.
No, not yet. I think there's still time for other drivers to challenge him on that. But yeah,
Okay.
Hawthorn though, he's right up there. He's second now.
Yeah.
So he's gaining momentum and showing that a British driver can win some GPs and he won one, but he can actually beat the rest of the world and not just be good at sports car racing. So yeah.
Because I think at this stage we've only had Europeans and Argentinians win races, I think.
Yes.
I don't think any other nationalities have won, so, other than now we know Hawthorn has one, of course. Yep. So up to the German Grand Prix at the Nürburgring. So it is there are only 18 laps, but just as a reminder, this is like a 22-odd kilometre track. So the laps are about 10 minutes each. So we're talking monster here. Unfortunately, Gonzalez's purple patch maybe comes to an end because he was injured the previous weekend from a sports car race, and it was actually considered that the Maserati attack was considerably weakened. And I would 100% agree because Gonzalez is doing better than Fangio this year, I'm saying.
Yes.
So Fangio could keep pace with the Ferraris, but Ascari still got pole position with 9 minutes 59.8, followed by Fangio, and then Farina and Hawthorn rounding out the nearly Ferrari front row. So they're sort of back on top again, right? There was, however, a new gaggle of German cars entering this race, as this is in the German Grand Prix, and it is noteworthy that the best of these was over a minute slower than Ascari.
Interesting. Well, when you look at these German teams, they're not names that any of us would know. Like, it's not Mercedes, like many of us would be thinking.
They're just no-name teams. I'm tempted to have a look, and should we try to quickly name a couple? I'm going to have a very fast look. So, Rosa, if you want to talk about something while I quickly look it up, because I'm curious to see what these teams are called.
Yeah, well, you did find that with races, a lot of local teams and local drivers would enter them, and they were allowed to. Like, they didn't have to register. They didn't have to do anything. They could just roll up to the weekend and enter practice, and they'd be in the race. So, yeah, you do see a lot of like local teams, especially in the British and German Grand Prix, just swell out with Well,
I've got some interesting
these teams.
This is worth the pause because it's interesting. There's a team that's got a name that I really like called Veritas, and their drivers are
Veritas.
Their drivers sound so German: Seidel, Bauer, Karsch, Loof, Helfrich. There's about 7 or 8 Veritases. But this is what's interesting. There's a team called BMW-Heck, Heck, and another team called AFM-BMW. So there is a little bit of sprinkling. BMW, come on. And then there's a Veritas Veritas Meteor. So, and there's other teams. I don't know if they're German, but I'm judging by the name of their drivers. They are like a team called AFM, driven by Fitzau. So,
yeah, okay. Oh, well, there you go. We have BMW.
Yeah.
I didn't see that
one. Sort of BMW. I don't know what that is. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
Back to the drivers that count, because we don't really talk about those guys that, don't have the impact. Yeah. And that's not saying they're not good drivers. Even the ones I named, they could have been awesome drivers. They could have been like sports car legends or something, so no disrespect intended.
Yeah.
So at race start, Fangio took the lead, which is a rarity that Ascari didn't take his normal immediate command. However, it did take less than half a lap for Ascari to retake the lead and then draw away. By end of lap 1, he was 10 seconds ahead of Fangio, with Hawthorn right on Fangio's tail. The rest of the field was really well strung out, with Farina leading Villaraci and the rest. On lap 2, Ascari increased his lead, and Hawthorn had moved up to second place ahead of Fangio. He's going through a purple patch big time. But these two drivers tussled heavily for second and third for numerous laps. Now, just a flag, numerous laps means, tell us what that means, Rosa.
Yeah, it means 30 minutes because every lap is 10 minutes long.
Yeah, That's an unbelievable tussle. That's not just a tussle for 2 laps. That's 20 minutes.
No. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So this tussle became of greater significance as Ascari, leading by 40 seconds, suddenly had a wheel fly off. He did recover brilliantly and limped around on 3 wheels and a brake drum, and he did make it back to the pits. I don't know how far away he was from the pits, but he made it back. But he couldn't stop in his pit box properly due to the missing wheel, of course, and he lost well over 4 minutes. So at the front, Hawthorn was struggling to keep ahead of Fangio, and also Farina seemed to find new inspiration and started closing right up on the pair at front.
That's pretty good from a 47-year-old.
Yeah, he's still going for it, Farina, isn't he?
Yeah, yep.
On lap 7, Hawthorn, Fangio and Farina crossed the line together.
Again, like, they are such amazing finishes.
Yeah, you have to think
to the laps.
They're on full,
like everyone's really close.
Yeah, full. They have to be on full throttle. You know, like they're not trying to line up and do a demonstration run. You know what I mean?
That's right. I know.
So lap 8, Farina passed Fangio and Hawthorn into the lead, and Fangio shortly passed Hawthorn to take second place. At this stage, the top 3 drivers started to spread out, and Ascari meanwhile took Villaresi's car and made a determined charge to catch the top 3, with 3 laps at qualifying pace, which was about 10 minutes per lap. So unfortunately it came to naught as ominous blue smoke ended his race and he finished 8th and a lap down. Up front, Farina was driving superbly and went on to win by over a minute from Fangio, with Hawthorn a distant 3rd. Bonetto the Pirate, the only other driver to complete the race distance, actually finished a distance 4th.
Wow. So Sterling Moss finished 6th, but he had been lapped. So
Rosa, I see you mentioned Moss again finishing 6th, although he'd been lapped, but I'm starting to wonder if you're loving Moss as much as Enzo Ferrari is loving Hawthorn.
Well, I'm just interested because I'm just really interested in how his career actually takes off, because right now, like you say, if we didn't know that he was such a champion, he would be a nobody. Like he's choosing teams to race in that aren't reliable. They're not competitive. Like it will be interesting to see. I am sort of following him closely because he's just a big name, isn't he?
Yes, and no spoilers. You said the champion driver. Just to clarify that may not be the case. Not saying he's not a great driver. Okay. That's different.
He's a great driver. I think even Hamilton quotes him as one of his heroes of all time.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah.
So he has to do something good.
Yeah.
It's just interesting that,
okay.
that, in the early years he started with less of a bang.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so how's the championship looking?
Yeah, so Ascari, having not finished that race, is still on 33.2. Farina winning the race catches up a little bit. He's now on 20.
Mm-hmm.
Fangio on 19. Hawthorn on 18 and Gonzalez on 13.5. And we can say that Ascari has claimed his second World Drivers' Championship with 2 races to go, again, making him the first back-to-back winner.
That's really special, that back-to-back winner thing. Because I'm trying to remember. I remember when Prost won his back-to-back in 85, 86, it went back to this era, but not this two. But Prost defending his championship in 86 was the first time a driver defended it in a very long time, but this is not the time. I was just trying to remember. Right. And I remember there was another driver that's coming.
Okay,
so we're up to the Swiss Grand Prix, the second to last race of the season, and Ascari has wrapped up the championship. So I'm assuming he'll take his foot off the pedal, but let's see. August 23, there's 65 laps and 20 drivers in this race. A 3x2x3 grid formation. Now, interestingly, a pre-war racing star called Hermann Lang was brought into the Maserati attack as Gonzalez was still out of action. Now, when I saw Hermann Lang and thought, pre-war hero, obviously we're talking World War II went from 39 to 45. This guy must have been really old. But to my surprise, at the time of this race, he was about 44. So he wasn't as old as I thought, actually. He was actually 3 years younger than Farina, who was about 47 at this time. But this is probably a good time to do an age check. So, Rosa, do you want to give us a quick age check reminder?
Yeah, sure. Well, Ascari was 34, Fangio was 42, and Hawthorn was 24. So there's quite a big range of ages out there.
Yeah, and these guys are really battling with each other on track. And, and Hawthorn's so much younger. He's half the age of Farina.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So to practice and qualifying, Fangio actually took pole with a time of 2 minutes 40.1, followed by Ascari, 2 minutes 40.7, and Farina third with 2 minutes 42.6. Trintignant, we haven't spoken about him much during this year because he's in one.
No, he's a new guy.
He's not a new guy. We didn't talk about him because he's not one of those players.
Okay.
But he did something a bit special.
Yep.
He was in the Gordini, which we know as one of those underpowered, lighter French cars. Not saying all French cars are, just at
French
this time. Yeah. He qualified fourth, and he actually out-qualified a number of the Ferraris and Maseratis, including Villaraci, Hawthorn, and Lang. So a lot of attention went his way, rightfully. He did a great job. So on race day, as usual, Ascari and Fangio made superb starts, and Farina got left behind with nearly half the field passing him. What do we call that?
A nonsense start.
A nonsense start. I think we've got to use that every time. Every time someone just blows it big time. It started with Hawthorn, and it has to be passed on,
Now it's going to be passed on.
Yeah.
Yep.
So while Fangio led for the first part of the race, Ascari got passed halfway around, and Hawthorn was third and Marimon fourth. Little changed in the opening laps, and with the only thing of interest was Farina charging back up to third place. So pretty good recovery from him. Then on lap 11, Fangio, having gearbox trouble, pitted and switched cars with Bonetto the Pirate. Bonetto continued in sixth place, having received Fangio's higher placed injured car. And Fangio, in Bonetto's healthy car, resumed further back. So in actual fact, Bonetto moved forward. He moved forward in the race.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
So it actually helped him this time.
For now. By lap 20, though, Fangio was up to seventh in Bonetto's car, closing in on Bonetto in Fangio's car. So Fangio was catching his own car.
Fangio is catching up.
Yeah. His own car.
That's hilarious.
It is pretty funny. On lap 39, Ascari's lead was nearly 60 seconds. However, his engine suddenly went flat, and on the following lap, he stopped to find out that there was a blocked jet in one of the carburetors. He lost well over a minute and resumed in fourth place, enabling Farina, Marimon and Hawthorn to go by. Maserati hopes were now on Marimon, as Fangio's charge had faltered with ominous blue smoke belching from the Maserati. Ferraris were now 1, 2, 3, and on lap 50, drivers were given the signal to ease up, which Ascari chose to ignore.
Oh, wow. That sounds very familiar. We had the same situation, didn't we, at Monza between Leclerc and Sainz?
Yeah.
That fortunately didn't end too badly. What happened here?
Well, Ascari just flew past Hawthorn, and 3 laps later, he did the same to Farina. Now, this is a guy who's he's got the championship wrapped up. He's got the record 9 race wins in a row. He gets the sign to say hold position. And gentleman era? I don't think so.
No.
He just wanted to win.
He backed himself, didn't he?
Yeah.
And he just...
And Ferrari's got a history of this. This happened infamously in 1982, actually, between Pironi and Gilles Villeneuve. And I recall reading about that as well. They gave Pironi the sign to hold position, and Pironi was like, no. And he and Villeneuve was nursing his car, and Pironi took the lead and won the race. And those two drivers never spoke again.
Okay. Didn't something similar happen with Schumacher and Barrichello? And they finished they crossed the line 0.4 of a second apart.
That's right.
I think Schumacher still won it.
Yeah, I think Barrichello made a show of it by pulling up on the line, just to make everyone know he let the guy through, but he didn't. He didn't take the win. I think that would have been the end of his contract. I think that's what it's about, right?
Yes.
So So of interest, Bonetto in the Notwell Fangio Maserati finished fourth, one lap behind. So he got fourth place. And so maybe Fangio gave up on that car a bit too soon. And Lang finished fifth, 3 laps behind. So that was Lang, the pre-war hero.
So just an interesting side note here, and I don't want to give too much away, although I think I am giving a lot away. This is Ascari's last race and last race finish of his career.
That's pretty heavy, isn't it? Yeah.
I know. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in 54.
Yeah, because he does drive in 54, but it's a bit unconventional is probably the best way I can put it. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. But for this year, he's stretched his lead a little bit, and he's on 34.5. Farina in second on 24. Sorry, Fangio in third now on 20.5. Hawthorn hanging in there in fourth on 19, and Gonzalez on 13.5.
You know, Ascari really needed that win, didn't he? I mean, he was in big trouble if he didn't take that win from Hawthorn. Yeah,
exactly.
And Hawthorn was basically taught a lesson by the guy he looks up to. You know what I mean? He looks up to
his idol.
His idol basically gave him a smack. You know, I'm the leader. You don't get.
That's right.
Yeah, know your place. You don't just get a win when I'm around. You know, gee. Okay, we're up to the final race of the season, the Italian Grand Prix, and this is an 80-lap race. It's on September 13. And there were 30 drivers in this race, a lot of cars. And obviously a wider track than the others because it was a 3x3x3 grid formation, so all the way down side by side. Now, this is interesting. Farina shows more of his nettle, I think you can say, because Ferrari came with 2 new cars, the Tipo 553, in preparation for 1954. Now, these new cars had a much shorter wheelbase, and Ferrari were pretty open in saying that obviously won the Drivers' Championship, and they said they were withdrawing their dominant Tipo 500 cars, which they'd been using all year, and they were going to use this new Tipo 553 to prepare for 1954. So Ferrari went and made that announcement to everyone. Ascari, however, tested both cars and basically said, I'm driving the Tipo 500 because he found the new cars to be slower. So he wasn't driving them.
Sure. Oh, my gosh. Surely they would have sorted all of that out behind closed doors before announcing it to all and sundry and then having to go back on their announcement.
It's like Ferrari have this in their DNA, you know? Yeah, why didn't they sort it out before? They clearly didn't, and it was like egg on face, you know?
No. Yes, big time. Well, Ascari then even added more surprise to the paddock, because he announced that he was leaving Ferrari for the new Lancia F1 team, another Italian manufacturer. Some say it was because of a salary dispute, but others thought that it might be because there were rumours around that Mercedes were going to join and they had a very strong car, and Ascari thought that the new Lancia D50 would give him a better chance against the mighty German team. So that's interesting. He didn't think that Ferrari had it in them to defend his championship. And the other thing, I think this...
you go on.
Yeah?
No, you say.
Yeah, the other thing was that the designer of the Lancia was also the designer behind the Alfa Romeo, in which his father scored many of his wins, and also in which he died.
Wow.
So the guy is joining a team that his father had a lot of success in, but also lost his life driving for. So that is just like there's a lot there to unpack.
And I also wonder if, okay, we haven't heard much about Enzo Ferrari loving Hawthorn lately, but the mere fact, don't forget the start of this season, he gave him a green car and loved the fact that he crashed a bit. And
Yes.
I wonder if Ascari could see
Yep.
the future, and he could see he was no longer going to be the golden child. And maybe that's why he did that brutal, I'm just ignoring team orders and I'm going to take this win, I don't care, move as well, you know?
Yeah.
Mm.
Yep. Yep.
So anyway, to the race, we've got big changes for 54 coming. That's always very exciting. We'll see if that works out well for Ascari or not soon enough. Maserati came with extra drivers, but only Fangio and Marimon could break the Ferrari domination of the front two rows. So, on one hand, I almost want to say, because this is Ferrari's home track, but don't forget, this is Maserati. It's their home track too. So, it's hard to have a modern-day bias on the thinking here. So, Ascari got pole with 2 minutes and 2.7. Followed by Fangio half a second behind, and then Farina and Marimon next. So when the flag fell, Ascari led away with Farina and Marimon right behind, and Fangio making an uncharacteristically poor start. Marimon actually moved into the lead, and by the end of the opening lap, it was Marimon and Ascari who were side by side over the line. I wonder if Ascari was like, oh, who's this guy? You know?
Yeah. Is this nobody trying to take my limelight?
Yeah. Doesn't he know I'm driving the Tipo 500? Doesn't he know I'm joining Lancia next year? So by the second lap, the battle for the lead was now feverishly between the two Ferraris of Ascari and Farina and the Maseratis of Fangio and Marimon. Quite often, the car in fourth would leap out of the slipstream and go straight to the front. And this continued virtually for the entire race to the end, which made for a really thrilling spectacle for the crowd. And I was just going to make a quick comment here. This shows that these cars were not designed with much in the way of aerodynamics. But surely this would have been a big message to the car designers that, your car goes faster when this is happening. You know what I mean? Mm.
Yes. Yep. Well, we do see some advancement in car aerodynamics in the next few seasons.
Yeah, we do actually. Yeah, a very special advancement actually. Yeah. So a similar slipstreaming battle is taking place right behind the lead. So we had those first four cars just nose to tail taking turns up the front, almost like a Tour de France battle it seems, and taking turns braking the air. Yep. By lap 46, the thrilling slipstream battle went from 4 to 3 as Marimon was forced to stop with a damaged oil radiator. However, and ironically, when he resumed, he was right behind the leading trio again because that's where he came out of the pits.
Yeah, but he wasn't fourth, was he? He was a lap down.
But he was up there. He had the pace to be with them, so he was with them. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So at the three-quarter mark, the second group of slipstreaming cars, being Villarace, Hawthorn and Trintignant, there's Trintignant up there again in the Gordini, who were lapped, also joined the leading trio of slipstreaming cars, which is Fangio, Farina and Ascari. And for a period of a few laps, there were 6 cars circulating in a really tight bunch, just passing and repassing each other with a gaggle first, second and third and a gaggle a lap down. That would have been awesome.
That is amazing. And apparently Fangio and Ascari were looking at each other and grinning at each other as they blasted down the main straight.
That's phenomenal.
Together. That would have been funny. I could actually see them doing that.
They were wearing goggles, full throttle. You know, they would have been able to see each other's bare teeth. You know?
Yes. Yes. No helmets, exactly.
I'm not sure if they had helmets at this stage, actually. We should check that out. But,
I don't know.
So this left 5 cars still very close together, and so it continued until the very last lap, and everyone was expecting a photo finish. Now, don't forget, this was the season where we had the race of the century. This race is looking almost copy-paste, but with more slipstreaming excitement, I think.
Yep.
So on the final corner of the race, Ascari and Farina were side by side again, but then Ascari suddenly slid on a spilled oil patch, and this caused chaos. Farina drove onto the grass to avoid him, but Marimon was right behind and had no chance of taking evasive action, and he hit the Ferrari broadside on. Only Fangio benefited, as he was able to nip through on the inside and snatch victory by just over a second from Farina, with Villaraci 1 lap behind, but in this gaggle, a very surprised third, because by default he was there, and the other cars couldn't unlap themselves, couldn't finish ahead of him because they couldn't finish.
Oh.
So, wow.
That is an amazing There's nothing like an accident on the last corner to really finish a race.
Yeah.
Is
Can
there?
you imagine the people standing for that last lap? And just I feel sorry for the short people.
Yeah.
So, despite Ascari easily wrapping up the championship with 2 races to go, there were actually really good races this year. I mean, Ascari won. I don't know how many he won, but it seemed like most of them. And you'd think, when you think of a dominant season like we had in 2023, where Verstappen won 19 of the... did he win 19? 19 of the 21?
Yes,
19.
19. Yep.
There were not that...
19 of 23,
No,
wasn't it?
Sainz won 2. Sainz won
was
2, I think. And...
No, Sainz only won 1 and
Sainz.
his teammate won 2. So I think it was...
Yeah, so
Sainz only won
I meant
one.
Perez. Yes,
Singapore.
Perez won 2, Sainz won 1. Yeah.
Yes, Perez won.
So we didn't get that many great races this year. Maybe 1 or 2 that were memorable. But this was a season full of awesomeness, yet there was even more proportional domination. Yeah.
Yep.
So that's a wrap for 1953. So what are your final thoughts on that, Rosa?
Well, like you say, interesting year. Good on Ascari, first back-to-back winner. So interesting to see what 1954 brings us.
And I was also going to mention, we haven't mentioned it in many of our other episodes, but we should mention our social media handles. So if you want to get in touch with us, go to our website, f1timeportal.com, got to get that right. And you'll find links to the range of social medias there, including email, Facebook, Insta, and the rest.
Looking forward to hearing from you.
We are. Do you like the episode you've heard? Yeah. If you got nothing good to say, I'll give you a special web email to you for bad comments and good comments. I'll split it out. I'll make it really easy. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, no, keen to hear your feedback and comments. That'll be good.
Okay, thanks for listening, and we'll see you for 1954. Bye.
Bye. We have a Patreon.
Yay, we're a professional podcast now. So it means a lot to us if you are able to support the F1 Time Portal podcast.
For a small monthly fee, you not only get ad-free podcast content, you will also receive special episodes that are exclusively uploaded for our Patreon financial supporters.
We promise at least 2 additional exclusive episodes each month aligned to the decade we are up to in the show.
And you will also be able to make suggestions about any special episodes you may want us to research and present. We can't promise that we can do all of them, but we will consider them.
So, if that sounds like an entertainment bargain to you, go and sign up at patreon.com/F1timeportal today.
If you're enjoying our podcast, please tell your friends and non-F1 friends alike.
Yeah, and don't forget to rate us 5 stars or whatever highest is available on the podcast platform that you use.
We have a range of social media handles for you to connect with fellow listeners, so look up F1 Time Portal on all the usual platforms.
Or visit us at www.f1timeportal.com or email us at f1timeportal@gmail.com.
We would like to give credit to our primary reference materials, a series of books called Grand Prix by Mike Lang.
We also use many other written and digital references, which are in our show notes.
Thank you for your support.
Thank you.